Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy Friday. About 70% of homes have mold in them. And mold is a fungal growth that forms and spreads on various kinds of damp and decaying organic matter. And short-term and long-term exposure to mold can have various health effects. And that's why we're really glad today to talk with mold expert Dr. Jill Carnahan. Dr. Jill uses functional medicine to help patients to find the root cause of their illness. She is the author of Unexpected: Finding Resilience Through Functional Medicine, Science, and Faith. So today we're going to talk about where mold can be hiding, symptoms of mold exposure, testing for mold, and Dr. Jill's book, and so much more.
How are you doing today?
Good, good. Happy Friday.
Thank you. You too.
I made a brief intro. Could you tell us about your background, history, and how you become a functional medicine doctor?
Sure. I always known I was a healer, and I thought I was going to go into naturopathic medicine or chiropractic medicine or any of those. And then I realized that as I was applying, I went to undergrad and did bioengineering and really, really enjoyed the problem solving kind of aspect of that, like pattern recognition and problem solving. And then as I started applying to medical schools and getting accepted, I thought, you know what? Why don't I go to traditional medical school and try to make a change from the inside out? So at that time, I didn't know what functional medicine was, but I knew that I wanted to kind of get in and get a degree and be a healer. And that seemed like the best route. And it's interesting because I love the fact that I have a good background in traditional medicine. I can really bring both sides. If someone's in the hospital, has a stroke or heart attack, I mean, I understand all that. But then I found my true love, which is functional medicine, shortly after graduating, which is really getting to the root cause. And it's been history since then.
Awesome. Well, you kind of explained a little bit about what functional medicine is, which is like finding like the root cause, right? What role does functional medicine play in detecting mold in homes?
Yeah, this is the big one because traditional medical school teaches us that mold is an allergy and that's it. So it can cause you to sneeze or have congestion or maybe some lung issues or asthma or eczema or something like that, allergic responses, which is true. There are many people that can have allergies to mold. But what we're not taught in medical school is the whole innate immune system. What I learned with functional medicine is almost always at the root of complex chronic disease like autoimmune disease, cancer, neurodegenerative disease like Parkinson's or memory issues or even chronic pain or chronic fatigue. There's two things. One is the toxic load and one is infectious burden. And in this bucket of toxic load, phthalates, parabens, heavy metals, but a big, big, big player is mold. And there's literally probably 1 in 4 buildings in the US, maybe even more, that are affected by water damage. And people don't even know it. They just move to a different house or a different office or go to school or go to a courthouse, go to some location where there's a water damage issue and there's mold growing. And they start to feel funny. They maybe have trouble recalling memories, or they get irritable or angry or anxious, or they can't sleep, or they think. So it presents with all these other symptoms, and they might go to their doctor thinking they have early onset dementia, or they might have a new autoimmune disease. So it masquerades as 100 other things when the root cause is actually mold. So functional medicine is so core because we're saying what's the real cause underneath your Hashimoto's thyroiditis or your lupus or your cognitive decline. And I find I had my own journey we can talk briefly about, but with mold, many, many times underlying that new diagnosis of fatigue or migraines or autoimmunity is mold. So going to the root, you have to say, what is it and how do we deal with it?
But it's like very satisfying when you find that root cause and then really help people instead of like just give people pills or not being able to solve their problem for a long time. And I feel like a lot of these autoimmune conditions, it's not just it's people's quality of life too, and it's a long-term thing.
You're absolutely right because many people don't know. And if you're listening out there and you're not sure, maybe you've had your experience, one of the ways you can do on your own is do a timeline. Say, when did I last feel well? Oh, in 2008, I was fine. And then 2009, I moved to a new home and a new state or whatever. And often you'll find in your own doing the timeline of when you last felt well and when you started to go downhill, oh, there was an environmental change. I changed homes. I changed workplaces. I oh, we had a leak in our dishwasher and the whole kitchen flooded. Oh, I haven't felt well since then, or the basement, or and with homes, there's so many things that can go wrong. But if you do a timeline, you can often pinpoint when you last felt well and when things started going downhill. That's usually what I'll do with a patient. And then all of a sudden we detectively find out, oh, that time, I moved, and you can pinpoint something that changed. And environmental toxic load is encompassing so many things, but a huge portion is mold in our environment, and people don't even know it.
That's such a good tip. So now back to mold. Like, what is mold? How do you define mold? Because there are so many kind, like the mold that, hiding in our homes, but there's also like a mold that we eat, like from decaying like fruits or veggies.
Yeah, so fungi mold is this huge, huge category. And what happened is in the 70s, we started putting anti-fungicides, basically anti-mold in the paints. So when we're painting houses, most common household paints have fungicides or antifungals. So what happened, we thought this was going to solve the problem. So, okay, then we won't get mold growth in the buildings on the drywall. So what happened is just like antibiotic resistance, as we give our animals and our humans more and more antibiotics, we have these super bugs that have become resistant to antibiotics. Molds are no different. So nowadays, what we see growing inside of homes that have water damage. So first thing is you need a fodder, you need moisture. So that could come from a leak in the window, an unsealed attic that has moisture condensation, a blood from your sump pump in the basement, an finished crawl space that has standing water and communicates with your home. You could have a dishwasher, line from the fridge. I could name 100 other things, but all these things can cause water intrusion into your home. And most of our homes now, like the wall behind me, is built with drywall, which is porous. So if that wall were to get damaged from the roof or something and get wet, it's going to be a nidus of mold growth. And back before the 70s, before those paints came into play, we had lots of mold growing. And I would say like 100-year-old log cabin would probably be a better place if there was mold growth, because there's lots of porousness, there's lots of airflow inside and outside because there's cracks in the wood, versus nowadays the super efficient buildings that have no airflow in and out. All of a sudden we have a container that's completely sealed, and the types of mold, because of that fungicide in the paint that grow indoors, are usually more toxic. So classically, after water damage, things like Aspergillus penicillin are some of the first responders or the first growers, and they definitely can cause immune issues and dysregulation and inflammation, but they're not nearly as toxic as things like Stachybotrys and Gatomium. These are the black toxic molds, and they tend to grow after a few weeks. And these guys produce mycotoxins. They actually pour out toxins that are produced by the molds called Catoma globosum and trichosidines and all of these toxins that are immunosuppressive. They're neurotoxic. They're nephrotoxic to our kidneys. They're toxic to all of our organs. And people can get incredibly sick from the toxins that the mold produces.
That is so crazy. This is almost like a vicious cycle if we keep using these building materials, because many times you can't predict when you're going to have a leak or when, your window will break or something like that. So we really need to start thinking about healthier building materials. In addition to people start thinking about where are like at some places you would detect mold.
You're absolutely right. That's the issue is we're actually, it's not really when, it's if. I'm sorry, it's not if, it's when. It's more common that we all are going to encounter. In fact, I'm a mold expert. I've been doing this for over 10 years. I've recovered from mold and have a lot of experience. And just last year, I'm in a condo with multiple levels, and the neighbor up above fridge leaked. He didn't know it. It leaked down into my condo. I had Cattomium growing in my condo, and of course, I think I'm doing everything right. So it is really common. So the things we have to do are be aware of it, first of all, because you can fix the problem. And number two is, what I love to do is teach people how to get recovered, detox, but build resilience, so that not every single hit that we get from mold completely takes us out. So nowadays, if I get, back in the day when I first had mold, it almost killed me. I mean, it was so severe how sick I got. Nowadays, I can get mold exposure at a hotel or even in my condo. I don't feel well and I don't do the best, but I can recover much more quickly because the load in my bucket, my toxic load, is decreased so that I have margin. And when you have margin, all of a sudden you're able to recover more quickly.
That's really important, which we're gonna talk a little bit later, because I think your book is like perfect for this topic. But before we get there, I want to also ask about some short-term and long-term effects of mold.
Yeah. So, like I said, we that allergy effect is with classical medical, and that's common. You still have congestion of sinuses or brain fog or itchy, irritated eyes or skin rashes. But the deeper effects of mold, and we have to think about, so mold produces spores, and spores can be in the environment, but those are pretty large. And if we inhale the spores, they don't go into our bloodstream. They're too large. I mean, they might irritate the lungs a little bit, or the particulate, if the spore fragments are crushed or broken up. But the bigger issue is each mold produces a milieu of mycotoxins, and these are like, they're smaller than viruses. They're particulate, like a particulate matter 2.5 microns or below, which is again very, very tiny. It's like smoke or formaldehyde. So these things say behind me there was mold. The spores and the mycotoxins might be contained within that wall. And so if someone did air testing, they might not even find those spore fragments in the air that I'm breathing right now. But what they could find is the mycotoxins that mold is producing behind the wall can go right through the wall, and they can go right into our lungs. And because it's so small, our alveoli does not need even any transport. They can go straight from the alveoli to the bloodstream. So literally within seconds of being in a moldy building, if there's mycotoxins in the air, I could be breathing them, and they could have an effect on my brain, on my mood, on my skin within seconds, because we can inhale those. And even if we don't see it or it's behind the wall, and that's why it's so dangerous, because these mycotoxins, and because I mentioned earlier, buildings are often more LEED certified, or they're more efficient. So we're not having external airflow exchange as much as we used to. And because of that, we get this more intense effect. It's like dilution is the solution to pollution. And this is the anti-dilutional effect, because we have all these indoor environments.
Oh, that's so crazy. You had a great post about binders for mold detoxing. So, what is a binder and what can some people do?
Yeah, so say you have an issue in your home and you're either remediating, you're fixing, or you want to get well. What do you do? So we are reliant on, first of all, like I said, we can inhale these. We can even ingest them in foods. You mentioned earlier, many food sources are not the super toxic molds. So while they're not good for us, they typically don't cause Alzheimer's. If we have a little moldy cheese, it's just not the way it is. So you don't usually have to be quite as concerned unless you're really sensitive to mold. You still may want to avoid moldy foods, but it's not the end of the world. What we're talking about is super toxic mold. One particular toxin that they produce is something called mycophenolic acid. Mycophenolic acid is super common. It is actually what they use to make a drug called Cellcept. Cellcept is a drug they use for preventing immune rejection of organ transplants. So it completely suppresses the immune system. It's literally from the mold toxin.
Oh my God.
Right. So this is from molds. We can test this in house. We can test it in humans. So what do we do? Well, it gets in our tissues, it gets in our lungs, it gets in our bloodstreams, in our bodies. And one way we can test to see if you've been exposed is actually by doing urinary mycotoxin testing. Now, that doesn't prove that you for sure have something in the environment, but if you're excreting mycotoxins in your urine, you've been exposed in some way. So your question was, what do we do? We have to rely on the liver gallbladder primarily to filter our blood and filter out these toxins. So every intervention in helping you heal is revolving around your detox system. And you want to use the bladder, you want to urinate and drink freely and use electrolytes, but your bowels are a great way to use the detox system. And what you do is you take something to enhance glutathione. Glutathione is your master antioxidant. You can actually take liposomal glutathione, do it IV. You can even inhale glutathione if you get a prescription. But glutathione will enhance your body's ability to detox, to filter your blood, and to excrete from the liver into the gallbladder these toxins that are water soluble and then can be eliminated through the bowel. So the number one thing is glutathione or glutathione precursors. That would be liposomal glutathione, IV glutathione, NAC, lipoic acid, vitamin C, selenium, glycine, glutamine. All those are precursors. The second thing would be liver support, and this could be some of those I just mentioned, but also milk thistles, a wonderful liver support, B vitamins, methylated B vitamins, NAD, that's all core. Mm-hmm. And then you want to do, your bile is going to hold those, sequester those water-soluble now toxins so they can be excreted in the stool. But if you don't use a binder, it's like a merry-go-round. Your body's very efficient, and it will reabsorb those toxins, and they'll go right back in your system. So we use binders like clay, charcoal, Welcome, cholestyramine, zeolite, chlorella, many, many types of these. And these all have a charge, and they'll actually grab onto the toxins and pull them out through your stool, and you'll eliminate. So that's kind of the picture of how you would do a detox.
Well, this must be really hard for individual to actually know what they're doing. That's why I think it's very important when you're thinking about these different mechanisms. It's really important to see a professional like yourself. I think people have different dosage, and
Yeah. And children, and okay, so obviously you can treat children, but you have to be careful, and you have to know the dosages. You're right. It really, really is. One thing I did that was just to try to make it easy because I can't see all the patients is we do Quicksilver Scientific has a mold detox box. And I helped to have them collaborate. I just told them this is the stuff you need to do in that, and that's something that's available online anywhere people get its Quicksilver. It's called Dr. Jill's Miracle Mold Detox Box. But what it has is it has the glutathione with the B's. It has a liver sauce with the liver support. It has NAD, it has electrolytes, and it has binder. And it's kind of like I always joke it's like the Happy Meal for mold, which is a terrible example. It's kind of like a simple way if someone doesn't know how to get started. That's a great way to do it.
Yeah. You also recommended testing for mold with the qPCR testing. So what is that? Explain a bit.
So qPCR is qualitative PCR. It's testing for DNA in the dust of the homes and rooms and houses and buildings that we're in. So for example, if you're building a home or buying a new home, or if you're just wanting to check your own home, qPCR is a great way that you can do yourself. You can order this online, and they'll send you like a dust cloth or a Swiffer cloth, and you'll collect dust from your home, and then the lab will check for DNA in the dust of mold. So then you can get a report, say what mold is in my dust. And that gives you a historical snapshot of what might have been in your home. And it's quite accurate. I still to this day use it as a starting point, because then if I see Cotomium or Stachybotrys or some of the really nasty black molds that are immunosuppressive, we can go further and say, well, okay, where is this located? And then you probably want to get an inspector. Like qPCR is a great start if you don't know what to do and you're not sure and you want to know if there's mold in your dust.
Yeah, we have one quick question coming. Is the detox box safe while breastfeeding?
Oh, great question. So breastfeeding, we know with breast milk of women, you actually are excreting your whole toxic load into breast milk. It's one of the ways women do it. So I never recommend detox while breastfeeding, no matter what kind of detox. It's just not good because you're going to enhance, unless you pump and dump and you don't use that breast milk, but that's not good either for the baby. So I would definitely not do any detox during breastfeeding.
Oh, huge, huge. Someone asked, how about immunolytics Petri dish mold test?
Yeah, so great question. So these are easy things you can buy at Home Depot or Lowe's or anywhere, little Petri dishes. And if you have very little money and you need something to test, this is a great way, very inexpensive. It's not great, but I'll tell you what you can do. So you put those Petri dishes out according to instructions. I think it's like 24 or 48 hours open, and then you close them and watch for a week to see if anything grows. And the hard and fast, like simple poor man's rule is if it's 4 or less colonies, it's probably low growth. If it's 5 to 8 colonies, it's moderate, and 9 or more colonies, you can just count the number. It's probably an issue. But again, all you're going to see is these fuzzy white things. You don't know if they're which kind of molds or anything. And if they're in the air, like we said before, some of the mycotoxins that are the most nasty are not going to be in the air and get into that dish. So you could get a dish that looks pretty clean with like 2 or 3 colonies and still have a massive mold issue. So it's not a bad way to start, but I wouldn't trust that completely.
Yeah, so if you have done that test, you better take next steps to make sure, quantify, and then double check.
Yeah.
And you have a free mold resource in your LinkedIn bio. What's in that guide?
Oh, yes. So again, because I can't see everybody, and this is such an important thing, I put together, like, it's like an ebook. It's like, I don't know, 30 pages. And it's just like, okay, what do you do with your clothing if you have mold? What do you do with if your laundry room floor needs repairing? And like a lot of basics on what do you do with your body? What do you do with your supplements? What do you do with your house and your items in your house? So I kind of try to put all the very basics to get started and kind of all the core supplements I just mentioned in that book. And it's free. It's totally, totally free. So you can download in the bio of my link or my Instagram here.
Thank you so much for doing that. But now tell us about your new book, because I also really love the title, Unexpected Finding Resilience Through Functional Medicine, Science, and Faith.
Oh, bless you. I'll show you the cover because it's so pretty. I had so much fun. So this is the cover. And basically what I did is, I don't know, 6 or 8 years ago, I felt like I should really start telling my story because I went through breast cancer at 25 and then Crohn's disease at 26, overcame them both in the midst of medical school. So I was really, really ill in my 20s fighting cancer and then autoimmune disease. And I recovered from both and thought my life was going great until I don't know, 10 years later, I started having symptoms and found out my office had really bad black toxic mold. This is about 6 or 7 years ago now. And I got very, very sick from mold related illness. And I always say, if you listeners out there are just struggling with this or have come in contact with this, cancer was a walk in the park compared to mold. I think mold is way more difficult. And so by default on all these things, I had to become a mold expert to really understand and heal my own self. So the book is really my own journey, but what my hope is that the reader sees themselves, because we all have struggles, we all have difficulties, and I give lots and lots of really practical tools on how to find mold, how to overcome illness, how to deal with autoimmune disease. So it's my story, but the real truth is it's tons of lessons that I've learned in the journey on how to overcome really anything that's coming your way.
That's amazing. And usually, like the three things, functional medicine, science, and faith aren't usually used together. Like, why do you think they're kind of complement to each other in your book?
I love that you mentioned that, because I did want to kind of get a little bit of a, so my view, I definitely have a strong faith, but even if you don't believe in God or don't have any sort of belief, it's relevant because it's almost like a way to view left brain, right brain, masculine, feminine, science, faith, all these things that we think are like dichotomous. They can actually be, I think our best human self is when we embrace both. And for me, the science and the faith, the science is the analytical, like, and problem solving, engineering part of my brain, super important in problem solving and getting resilience. But the deeper part is the heart, the spirit, the soul, the intuition. And you really need both. And for me, faith is obviously my own belief in God, but even bigger than that, it's how do we deal with the inevitable uncertainty that life brings us? Because we all have uncertainty. And if we just have science doesn't answer all of the problems there, so we kind of have to have this bigger view. And for me, it was bringing both of these concepts in together, and you get a much bigger ability to solve problems, to live a joyful life, and to deal with this uncertainty that we all face every day.
That that is beautiful and amazing. And for those who are fortunate enough to get to see you, what does the session with you look like?
Yeah, so my new sessions are anywhere from 90 minutes to 2 hours, and I just sit and really listen and dive in and have you tell your story and tell me more about what happened when things changed. I'm taking notes, and then we get a plan of pretty deep testing. I'll test the stool for the microbiome. I'll test organic acids for urine. I'll test toxic load. I'll test for mold. I'll test all of the immune markers, and I'll do a lot of I do a lot of labs because I love the data. And then they'll go away with a plan. It sometimes includes supplements, definitely diet, nutrition, lifestyle, exercise. And I'll always talk about mind body too, because whether it's like teaching people to be kind to themselves and love themselves, or if they've not dealt with childhood trauma, I'm not the expert, but I'll help them find someone who does. And we also, in my office, I have a chiropractor, a massage therapist, a fascial counter strain therapist, so nutritionist. So we have lots of other people that work alongside me to really help people get the full spectrum of healing.
Wow, that is amazing. So how do people sign up? Do they just go to your website where they could DM you if they
Yeah.
want a consultation?
If you want more information, I will be sure and put it in the chat, but I'm giving away a free chapter of the book. So if you want to know more about that, and that's a great way to stay in touch too, you'll just give me your email, and we of course don't share that, but you get free chapter, and the mold guide, all the stuff is free. But you can go to readunexpected.com and /free chapter. So readunexpected.com/free chapter. Grab your free chapter and see if you like the book before you buy it. And gosh, I hope you buy it because I hope it impacts lives. But even if you don't, you can have the chapter for free.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and then for what you do and the book. And I encourage everybody, and obviously thank you everyone for joining, and be sure to follow Dr. Jill and check out the book and also sign up for the free chapter. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was so fun to be here. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.